What's going on, everybody? It's Patrick Dang here with the Parallax, and today we have a special interview for you. We're going to have Kid Ice, one of the co-founders of JUUNI, here to talk about everything that he's working on over there. So, Kid Ice, how you doing, man?
Hey, yo, what's up, Patrick?
What's up? Hey, do you go by Ice or Kid Ice nowadays?
Actually, I go by Ice nowadays. I think that's what everyone calls me now. So
Ice, okay. Because when I met you,
yeah,
you're Kid Ice. So now you just drop the kid, now just Ice. Okay, cool, man. For people who may not be super familiar with JUUNI, if you were to give them like a quick, like what is JUUNI and who you are, like what is it exactly?
yeah. So JUUNI is it's an art collectibles PFP collection with Hex. It is our Zodiac themed collection. As for me, U.S. trained doctor. I live in Silicon Valley, kind of like my main job, and then at nights, this is what I do. Web3.
NFTs, right? Okay. And just so everyone knows, and to be transparent, I am an advisor to JUUNI as well. But we're still going to have a nice conversation. I'm still going to ask great questions, so I'm going to be as unbiased as possible. But just but just keep that in mind, okay? Because I work with ICE directly and stuff like that. So, like you said, JUUNI is like. Well, actually, I want to get to know you a little bit more and get the audience to get to know you a little bit more, right? So, like for you, you're doing an art PFP collection. Is that right?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. So I guess first of all, like how'd you even get into NFTs? Like was crypto something you always watched, or, is it something like you recently picked up because there's so much like attention coming to it?
I guess I was in crypto, like more kind of like as an investment vehicle. I think back in like the early 2000s or 2020, where I was just like dollar cost averaging to ETH and Bitcoin. Nothing too crazy, but just like, wasn't doing too much. And I think obviously in Silicon Valley, everyone's very tech focused. And a couple of buddies of mine were just showing me, I think there's a huge kind of like wave of NFTs that became really popular in the late 2000s or 2021. Co-founder, who's also our chief tech officer, he actually showed me the very first NFT collection that I saw was Azuki, and
Oh, interesting. 2022,
yeah,
right?
it was. I think they were selling it at like 1 ETH at the time. And I was like, wow, this is so expensive because ETH at the time was like 3K
Yeah.
something. But I mean, the art was like, it was amazing. Like it drew me in. I think for me, I kind of just wanted to learn more. And so I kind of took my time to like figure out the space, see what it's like. Honestly, I think the first NFT I bought was like a Bobu.
The Bobu
Because I wanted
farmer.
to be, yeah, the Bobu farmer. Yeah, this guy is hilarious on Twitter. But I just wanted to kind of be part of the Azuki ecosystem. And then, kind of just took off from there. I was just kind of buy into a lot of different anime projects because that's kind of what I identified with.
Okay, quick question
And
on
then,
that. Like, when Azuki came out, you didn't buy it, and then they basically got the Bobu farmer and fractionalized one of the NFTs. Was that just like a light way to get into the ecosystem? Kind of like, you pay like, I forgot how much it was, a couple $100, right? Something like that. And you're like, okay, I'm part of the Azuki crew now. And then from there, were you just like, oh, like this is actually pretty cool. So now I'm going to buy like the main collection.
No, I mean, I think they're really smart about it because I think I'm a pretty cautious investor in a lot of ways. So I kind of like just want to test the waters first with Bobu. And honestly, like it's just kind of like a rabbit hole because like the moment you're in the community, you see how amazing it is. And I think they had like box drop on, I think their LA party, and it was huge. T and I were like, yo, we got to get into like Azuki. Like can't just be holding Bobu farmers here.
Oh, so T was holding a Bobu farmer too at the time.
I mean, I think, yeah, we were both just like Bobu farmers. There's nothing wrong with Bobu. Like, we love it too, but it's just like, it's something about actually being part of the main collection that was most appealing.
Got you. Okay. So you ended up buying an Azuki and getting familiar with the community, right? And then from there, what got you to like think about starting a project, right? Because like you said before, you're like a trained doctor, right? Which is like your day job essentially. And then you do like NFTs at night. Why spend the extra time to get into like more deeper into NFTs if like you already got a career going on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what it really comes down to is like finding your passion. I love medicine. I love what I do, but I also look at things that I can do outside of medicine as well. I think the biggest thing about the NFT space, I think it's just so new, and I feel like there's that kind of creativity where everyone just like is really talented. There's so many things that people can do with the space, but I think the biggest thing about starting any project is most important to identify what is a big problem that you see in the space, and what can you do to build a solution around it. Versus like building a project because you think it's cool and then trying to find your target audience afterwards. I think that just makes it harder as a project.
That's an interesting point because during a bull run, it's kind of like anything will sell, and it doesn't even matter who the target market is. It's just like, let's just copy this thing and then just put it out, right? So for you, I guess when you were starting to think about a project, were you just like looking at the space and thinking what problem you can solve? Like that's a very like a tech startup kind of mentality, right?
I think the way it was is I think it's just like I actually didn't have any idea to start a project. I think I just enjoyed collecting. It's kind of just what I was doing. I just collected a lot of different anime projects. I was also doing commission work from different artists. I see their work, I see their foundation page. I'm like, yo, I gotta have at least one part of their collection. I think it's just
Mhm.
like kind of the collector nature in me.
Actually, before you go on that, one thing I'm curious about is, did you like commission a lot of artists like when you started to get into NFTs? Like you would just find like a random person or something, and then you'd be like, "Hey, I'll pay you to make a commission of my Azuki," for example.
I think it didn't start off that way. I think it started off buying into collections first because honestly, I just didn't know that many artists in the space. A lot of the artists that I ended up meeting was just kind of through Twitter and kind of DMing them and kind of talking to them. It just takes some time to find all these artists because the space is really fragmented. It's really hard to find who does what art. Even on foundations, it's actually really hard to find like anime art, for example. So it's
Interesting.
just yeah, it's just like there's just a lot of like hoops to go through to kind of find like what you're.
Like what makes it difficult to find? Because like I've been on Foundation too, and I see there is anime art on Foundation art for sure, right? Is it that you're trying to find people that you trust, or is it like you trying to build a relationship with them, or like what is it that you're looking for exactly, and why is it hard to find?
Yeah, no, you touched on a huge point actually. That's probably it's actually one of the reasons why I ended up connecting with you is because I think the biggest thing about this space is because we're all anonymous, we're all like behind JPEGs. I think the most important thing that I value is integrity and reputation. I think those two kind of go hand in hand because you never know who's going to rug you or like scam you, right? So it's like you kind of like walking through the space in like in a I would say like a guarded way, but also trying to open up to people because you know that everyone else is trying to connect with you as well. So
Okay.
same way with artists too, right? So like, I don't know if this artist is legit. Like, is he copying someone else's art? Is he just
Oh,
on
paid
Fiverr?
another
Like,
paid another guy to do it, and he said he did
yeah,
it, something like
exactly.
that.
Like, I have no idea. So obviously,
Yeah,
it just takes some time to kind of like figure out who's legit. And obviously, it's just word of mouth too.
yeah.
People will tell you about this artist. They're like, oh, yo, I'm gonna go check out this one. So a lot of it is just like build trust based on who you interact with, and then be through that trust, you kind of build out your network of further trusted networks
I
of
see.
people.
So it's really like reputation, essentially, right? Like an artist will start, they'll create some pieces, and then maybe they get to know some people, and they just keep saying positive things about this person, essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, from
Got
a
it.
collector's point of view, it's like finding like reputable artists and then connecting with them.
Mhm.
Same way vice versa through artists too, right? Like they need to find trustworthy clients too, right? Because like imagine if they spend like 2 weeks or a month worth of work,
Yeah.
right? And then you do for a commission and you just don't get paid, right? So
Yeah,
that feels bad too.
that's definitely possible. And they'll be like, "Hey, send it over," and they just copy it and be like, "All right, well, peace out."
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's just like they drew it on like they just send over the files and you can just save it and that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So
Okay, so I guess you join the Azuki community, you learn more about the NFTs, you start commissioning artists, and I guess learning about that space too, right? So then when it came to JUUNI, was it that like how do you even decide to do JUUNI with T, right, the co-founder as well, right? Were you just like, hey, we should do a project in the art space, anime art space, or like what was that conversation like?
I think so T and I, we are both like, I think we're just naturally collectors at heart. Like, I think
Hmm.
even before, NFTs, we were like collecting Pokemon cards. We were
Hmm.
really big into the sneaker game. In some ways, I think NFTs was our natural progression into the next evolution of collecting, I would say. Because the space is so new, like, I think our standard of what a good art and good project should be, they're just
Hmm.
so far and few in between. So, like, I think some
Hmm.
things need to change. Like, this is like when we're fresh into like the bear market, right? And I
Hmm.
think it was like, when the bull market was dying down, there was just less and less. I think around that time, there's just a lot of degen projects that was popping up too. And like, in some ways, I feel like I was losing some faith in the space as well because I
Hmm.
felt like there was nothing quality coming out
Yeah,
of,
from an
of,
anime
of
perspective, you mean, right? Or in
just
general.
anime in general, like an anime or art perspective, or even like
Got
just
you.
for a project as well, right? Like, what value were they really giving to holders? Like it was just like a kind of a pump and dump kind of season.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's interesting about that is like as I learn more about the industry and I understand like who the founders are and what their intention is, it's kind of interesting because like for a lot of projects I see, they'll get like a big deal artist that worked at XYZ company as like marketing, right?
Mhm.
And then you look
Mhm.
at their one of one work and then you look at the PFP that they come out with, night and day, where it's like yeah, it's a similar style, but the quality of the PFP is so low relative to what they can
Yeah,
do. So it's like you already
yeah,
know this person probably them did, they did it pretty quick and they were like, "Gee, let's just put it out," right? When I meet certain people that like kind of tell me like what goes on behind the scenes, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it. I understand. Like, did you feel something like that as well? Or
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like I think it's like you can actually can see from projects where they just commission the artist to do their work. Obviously, like when the artist is not like kind of leading the creativity and the design of the art, the project art is going to suffer because it just looks not like what the artist has been putting out before, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah. It just looks
um,
different for some reason.
it just looks different. It just looks like not what you expected it should have been. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so I think there's kind of like a rise in I think what it means to be like an artist-led project where you really give artists like full creativity and reign to kind of do what they do best, right? Is to draw and create the concepts and build out the creativity and design of what the collection should look like, right? And then for us at JUUNI, we just really provide kind of like the guide rails to kind of help guide where the direction the collection should look like.
Okay.
Set up the background of the story and the
Okay.
worlds.
So let's
Yeah.
let's say for JUUNI, right? You're working on JUUNI. Based on my conversations with you, right? It seemed like
Mhm.
when you were working on the PFP, the thing that you really tried to make it clear to me was that you really wanted to do high quality art.
100%. Yes.
Okay. So like what does that mean exactly to a lot of people look at art, they'll be like art is subjective. So like for
Mhm.
you, everyone has their own opinion about it, but like how would you
Mhm.
define like what high quality art is?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think number one, like you said, like art is definitely subjective. Like everyone has their own taste and preferences. So, whatever, some people like, some people definitely dislike. But I
Hmm.
think collectively as a whole, when we look at
Hmm.
an art piece, quality art is something that majority would agree like this is good. Like first impression, I think really matters a lot,
Hmm.
especially in NFT space. Like the first thing you see in a collection, and it really shows kind of the dedication and kind of the intentions of the team
Hmm.
behind it, right? If you're putting out a lot of time and effort and care to put out like this really nice piece of art,
Hmm.
then it shows that the team, the founders really care about the project, right?
One thing I noticed, because I did the art direction for the Parallax NFT, right? And then I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm the best artist or anything. I'm not an artist. I just see myself as a creator in general. Something I've
Mhm.
learned in the NFT space is that good art is kind of subjective, right? Everyone has their own preferences to what good is. But what I
Mhm.
look at nowadays is actually effort. If I look at a piece, I can see whether it's high effort or low effort. It doesn't mean it's good, but
Mhm.
I can tell someone spent a lot of time on it based on the layering, someone like painting the textures on like a character, for example. Like, so you can tell, after you train your eye a little bit. Like, what do you
Mhm.
think about that? Like high effort versus low effort?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean that's a great point because I think I've been looking at so much different art on a daily, so you can tell what's high effort too. I think when you see the attention to detail, when you see kind of like the composition and the color schemes, all these kind of play a part, and they all kind of have to cohesively look good together. And that's what you can tell something like high effort because they were very thoughtful from start to finish on how the art should look. I think that's kind of like people I think can recognize what's high effort because they can see all that come together. Like it just looks natural to them.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I get
'Cause I
that.
think, you'll notice, I think when art looks bad, like there's certain parts of it that just looks off, I think. You can call that low effort or you can call that maybe just lack of experience or lack of.
Some people might call it style.
I mean, it could be style too, like some of it could be style, like some of it could be intentional. I think that could be
Yeah.
definitely like a focal point of the art. But in general, I think what the art should look like is a very cohesive piece of work.
Got you, got you. Okay, so let's talk about your artist, right? So Hex is somebody that joined the JUUNI team, and he's the one that is like kind of leading the art side, right? So can you tell me about who Hex is and like why did you choose him versus like any other artist that you could possibly work with?
Yeah, 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 for sure. So Hex, he is our creative director, our main artist, and also our co-founder as well. He's had, I think, 8 years of professional artist gaming industry. He's been around for a while, and he's also been in the NFT space too. He's like done commission work for about a year in
Mhm.
NFTs as well. As for how did I find Hex, I guess like when T and I we were thinking about the concept of our collection, right? The biggest thing is like we want to do something different than what the space already had. In my mind, I wanted to do something like a Zodiac themed collection. I don't think there was really one out there. And plus, like, the whole point about like a PFP, right, is to form like an identity, but also to kind of provide some sort of familiarity with it. And so we wanted to do something that was people kind of knew about, but also be totally new for them too. And I think Zodiac themed collection would totally fit well into our concept. And
Mhm.
so like I was kind of going around Twitter, kind of looking at different artists, looking at their portfolio, looking at their foundation, ArtStation page. And I kind of just made like a list of artists that I was just going to like reach out to and see if they're interested. And Hex was the first one on my list. I reached out to him. He was skeptical at first, right? Rightfully so. Like as strangers, creators, it's hard to like trust someone until you really build that connection. And, but I think, Hex is such a trustworthy person. He's also super hardworking too, and
Mhm.
like, I think I identify with him a lot. I think the fit between us was just so good that I think naturally, like, doing a project together it was going to be good, I think, because I think we both had the same vision and the same thoughts on how the project should look. For why we picked Hex, I didn't mention this before, but like, I think Hex, on his foundation page, he does a lot of artwork, and he had this one small collection called Animal Girls that was really kind of aligned to what we were thinking for kind of like a
Mhm.
zodiac humanoid themed collection. I felt he was like best fit for what we could build, and I'm super blessed and super thankful that he decided to
Oh,
join us.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he works quick and his art is good. I've seen it firsthand.
Dude, I actually think he's like the fastest artist I ever seen. Like, I give him kind of like a deadline of what, I think when should things be done, and he cuts it by like a fourth of the time. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that's what comes from being a professional artist.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So you got the team together, you got Hex, you got the art. I think what people are curious about is like, okay, is JUUNI like, would you consider it like a art project? Would you consider it an IP project? You've been telling people that you want to kind of help uplift the space for artists and collectors, right? So like, outside of the art side, like what is JUUNI like, trying to do essentially?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think for us, like I think we're kind of approaching it as like two ways. For us, like we're really pushing for kind of like a recognizable IP brands through storytelling, whether that be through lore, through
Mm-hmm.
music, through animation. And really it's kind of to help build out the brand to make it recognizable, because the biggest thing that we see for artists is like they really need to have discoverability, right? They really need people to see their art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard for people to see their art just based on their one-on-ones, right? However, like, I've seen from just experience how artists really take off when they kind of do art for brands, and
Mm-hmm.
that brand kind of helps really elevates their work,
Mm-hmm.
showcase their work to the world. And that's kind of like what one of the avenues what we're doing is like people love storytelling. They love being part of a bigger story. And that's kind of what our brand is about. And then we bring artists with us to uplift them and help them be recognized for their work,
Mm-hmm.
recognized for their arts. And also we really build out kind of like a haven for both artists and collectors to, to mingle together, to connect with each other, to really kind of bring together two parties that kind of naturally would mesh together that
Mm-hmm.
were pretty separated in the space.
One thought I had is because then recently I've been studying a lot about how the contemporary art world works. And then from my
Hmm.
understanding, although I'm not an expert, so artists are kind of like dime a dozen in a sense, right? There's a lot of them and it's very difficult to make money because it's like you might be really good at drawing, but sales
Hmm.
and marketing and growing on Twitter is a whole different skill set, right? So if an artist spends, let's say 12 hours a day drawing, how many are they spending engaging on Twitter? Probably not that much until like the work is done and they
Hmm.
post it, right? So in the contemporary art world, how it works is like you have these galleries, whether it's a small gallery or a larger gallery, they'll just find
Hmm.
these artists and they know how to market them and they will make the
Hmm.
artists. So it's like, and usually it's the galleries that make more money, not the artist. So it's almost as if the gallery is like a publishing company in a sense, right? And they'll find the
Hmm.
artist and then they will like increase the value of that person's art more by
Hmm.
sales. And then
Hmm.
collectors will buy it because it's like, oh, if this gallery came out with it, it must be good. I guess when it
Hmm.
comes to JUUNI, right? Like it seems like you want to uplift artists. So is it like you're trying to put together a community to like teach them the skills to maybe help them do their own sales and marketing? Or like what, like if you're an artist and you're like pretty decent at drawing and you want to take it to the next level, right? Like how do you think JUUNI will help this particular type of person?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that's a great framework of what art galleries do. For Studio REM, we're really trying to be that curated arts.
Wait, what is
Um,
Studio REM for people who may not be familiar with that?
yeah, so Studio REM is our parent company for JUUNI, which
Mm-hmm.
is our Genesis collection. And it's kind of like our mission is to kind of like co-build and co-create with artists. And we act kind of like as an art curation, kind of like an accelerator company for artists. We really help them build out kind of like their own art style on the blockchain. And
Mm-hmm.
we take care of all the logistics behind the scenes, work for them, and really kind of bring up the art to the forefront and, showcase artists under our umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
essentially.
Okay, so basically, it's almost like a modern day Web3 artist accelerator. Is that like I'm just making that up, but
Yeah,
like
our
that's
modern day like art curation company. Yeah, exactly. It's like, we felt like, there's a lot of artists in this space. We bring them under our umbrella, and then we kind of help build out their collections and help showcase their work and bring, the audience to them. In general, like give them enough commission and financial pay to kind of get them to continue doing the work that they do, because it's tough doing stuff on their own. It's tough to like it's like you said, it's hard for them to market on their own, hard for them to do business side of things, sales on their own. It's even harder to do all the tech stuff behind the scenes on
Yeah.
their own as well.
Yeah, yeah.
We kind of try to kind of be that support for them.
Got you,
Yeah.
got you. Okay. So let's say somebody joins JUUNI and they're an artist, right? So is it that
Mhm.
you're gonna help all these artists that are coming in? Because I'm guessing that there's certain ones that you're gonna pick and then maybe they'll do a collection or whatever, right? But for let's say like
Mhm.
the average person or the up and coming artist, right? Do you want to build like an educational platform for them to like get up to speed? Do you want to like
Mhm.
connect them with collectors and maybe help them get commissions? Like what's the gist there?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of good points. So, I mean, like for upcoming artists, right? Like, when you're an upcoming artist, you really want to learn and develop your own style. And who better to learn than from professional artists that you want to learn from? And,
Hmm.
there's artists that want to teach too. So, like, we have in our Discord, we have like artist streams going on.
Hmm.
People are chatting away, they're talking, they're telling them what kind of tools they use, what is
Wait,
what their
can you
recs.
explain the artist stream? Like I've seen it myself, right? But like I think people need like a visualization, like what's going on in this stream.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's something that I've always been hoping for it to start, but I'm really glad that it started like pretty organically that way. What it really is artists in general. Like I've seen
Hmm.
artists, they stream their work, and it really kind of gets people to kind of watch the creativity process of the work from start to finish. It's also really cool because it's also really interactive. Like you can actually talk to the artist, you can hear what their comments are, what their thoughts about coloring this part.
So how it works is I've been on it myself. It's like on Discord, there'll be an artist literally sharing their screen. They'll be drawing on their computer or tablet in real time.
Yeah.
And so people are watching it. If they're curious of like, oh, how do you draw this thing? Or like, hey, I think you should use this color. And then people just like can have a conversation about art essentially and like
Yeah,
the process of art.
about the art, about the creativity process. Yeah, I should probably better explain. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we have a voice channels for different purposes, and one of them is just mainly for art streams. Like there's tons of artists that comes on and they just kind of turn on their camera and they're just literally streaming their work in real time.
I have a
And then
question actually
people,
on
yeah.
so in the art world, right? I guess when it comes to art Twitter, I suppose. Do you feel that like a lot of artists know each other, like they're all friends? Or is it like, if you're an artist, you're just kind of like alone doing it?
Yeah, I mean, so this is something that I've kind of figured out the more as I've kind of been in the space. And
Hmm.
so all artists, they either know each other or they heard of each other. It's a pretty niche community. And so they kind of like all like kind of connect with each other in one way or another. And they also have like their own private discords, private groups. So they all kind of like hang out together. It's like because like for example, when I talk with Hex, right, I'm like, oh, do you know this artist? He's like, oh yeah, I know this person. I was like, do you know this one? He's like, yeah, I heard of this person.
I
He's
see.
really big in Japan. It's pretty cool to see actually. And Hex, he's pretty well known in his own right, so he knows a lot of artists too that way.
Okay.
And I think a lot of artists know him. So it's actually it's a bigger world than I imagined.
Okay, so they all know of each other and they're somewhat connected, right? So
Hmm.
if they're already connected, like do they already have their own like groups, right? So then like you would kind of have to be like, hey guys, you guys are connected already and you guys are doing your own thing, but I think you guys should hang out in Junie, right? So is that like, what do
Yeah.
you think about that?
So we recently brought on Tu, who's a really great artist in his own right too, but he's also pretty well connected to with the artist community as well. And
Mm.
so when I talked with him, he was able to kind of bring on some of his artist friends to start streaming, and it kind of just started like a movement where other artists started seeing them stream. They started seeing that they're getting a lot of audiences, and so
Mhm.
they want to start streaming, and so it kind of became like this snowball effect. And it's really cool to see because like as an audience, like I tune in, there's like a different artist doing their work, any time of the day, usually sometimes. And it's like, it's cool to see because people are hopping into the voice channel, they're talking and they're chilling. We
Yeah,
got lo-fi playing. Like, it's just like a good chill time that I think,
got you.
I feel like it was missed a lot in a lot of these servers because a lot of it's just like grinding the chat when, a lot of times you can just hang out in the voice chat too.
Got you, got you. Back in February of this year, when I was looking for an artist to help me with the Parallax NFT, and I reached out to a lot of
Mhm.
people actually, especially people in Japan, like anime artists in Japan, and a lot of them didn't want to do it because they had a negative perception of NFTs at that time. It seems like artists are coming around to the idea, probably because of like financial benefit, right? But like, what have you seen in the space in terms of like artists being more receptive to NFTs? Like, do you feel that a lot of them are still like anti NFT, or are they like warming up to it from your like community, I guess?
I mean, it's definitely still a challenge because I think so for existing artists in Web3, I think they're all the ones that are still here. Obviously, they still believe in NFTs. They find it really meaningful for them. And I think the biggest thing that they've always told me is just the community
Okay.
kind of keeps them going. Because I think for artists, right, like being part of a community, whether it's an artist community or a collectors community or people who just love art or who love being in a supportive environment, I think it keeps the artists doing the work that they do. It feels like their work is more meaningful that way. But for like a lot of artists who are not in Web3, I think there's a challenge because there's just a high barrier of entry for these artists because I mean it was a high barrier of entry for me. It was like
I
there's like you
see.
got to learn how to
The
make
wallet and all this
the
and that, right?
wallets, you got to do this and that, you got to connect to OpenSea, and then you got to
Yeah.
figure out how to use Twitter. I
It's kind
used Twitter for medicine before, but like, I barely use it, to be honest. I
yeah,
use it. I mean, for medicine, we use
another
social
platform, right?
networks, another platform. Yeah. So Twitter wasn't really my thing, but in NFTs or Web3, it's like Twitter is like the go-to for connecting, for news. Everything's in bite size, and things move fast, right? So like you kind of have to be on Twitter. So
Okay.
yeah.
That makes sense. And then let's look at the other side of the equation, right? So we got the artists, they're coming in, they're streaming. More artists are coming in because they hear about it, they want to learn more. Cool. But on the other end, we need people to buy the art, essentially, right? Because there's the creator and the collector. So what
Mhm.
can you tell me about like collectors? Because I know that for you guys, you try to like look for who might be a good fit for the community from a collecting perspective. I definitely have seen that on the Discord. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about like what's going on that side?
Yeah, that's actually easier for me actually because I see myself as more of a collector and definitely not an artist. But I think a lot of it's just like finding like-minded people who end of the day, right? Like I think people want to have quality work in their collection. As a collector, right? And you can get the best of the best to make quality work and then you get exclusive access to their work. Like that's a huge value for collectors, right? Because you're like you can collect something that no one else can have.
I see.
Um,
So from a collector perspective, let's say you have the money to like commission a bunch of artists to help you out.
Mhm.
Is it that you would prefer artists who is in high demand and then you get that like inside scoop or you get to cut the line and be like, "Oh, I'll give it to you because I like you." Is that like a good feeling or
So I mean that actually happened to me before, so I know that it is a good feeling. But
Yeah.
in some ways I do feel bad because I'm sure there's people that have been waiting a long time for their art. I think the biggest thing is when I look at art, right, and what makes art meaningful is it's like really like that formed emotional connection with the art, whether it's like it rekindles like a memory, reminds you of someone, or even reminds you of yourself or
Mhm.
an ideal version of yourself. Like all that is like what I would see in art that I find really meaningful to me.
I see.
And imagine like if you can collect it, it's like kind of putting that feeling into a bottle and then you just get to keep it and hold on to it.
So would you say like from a collector perspective, like I feel like collectors, it's just my gut feeling, but like when you kind of give a direction or an idea to an artist, you almost feel
Mhm.
like you are part of the creation process. So even though let's say the collector can't necessarily draw, but they can have an idea, then someone like brings it to life. You know what I mean? Like I think that's a cool feeling as well, right?
100%. I think like when you're part of the creative process too, it's like you feel empowered. Like you feel like the art is actually yours too, right? Because it's like you find that added meaning to it. Additionally, like how many times do people have art that they actually talked with the artist before, right? People who collect like fine art, right? But how many
Mm-hmm.
times have they really talked with and connected with like the artist behind the fine art?
Mm.
It's like when you have that connection with the artist and then with the art, it's like a whole nother level of like, yeah,
It's like, oh, I
meaningfulness
know
to
the
the artwork.
artist kind of thing.
Yeah, like I know the artist, he's on my DMs. I can just hit him up, ask them this and that.
Yeah, what do you think about this, right? So I like to spend time studying like the art industry as well. And then the thing that I've read in the book, in many books actually, is for art, especially like contemporary art or like fine art, a lot of reasons for why people buy is because like when you're in a situation in your life where let's say you have money, you already made it, all your friends already have money, now you're all on the same playing field, right? But for some
Mhm.
people, they buy art basically as an indicator of like taste and status. It's like kind of like saying like, hey, yeah, we all have money, but I'm cooler than you because I got special access to this painting that nobody can get. Or like, you know what I mean? So it's like taste, it's like the thing that everybody wants, but nobody can have. And you can't, doesn't matter how much
Mhm.
money you have to buy it, it's not for sale kind of
Mhm.
thing. Like, what do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely kind of like I think taste is kind of like an acquired thing. It's because what may be tasteful for someone may not be tasteful for another
True. It's
person,
relative,
and
right?
so like it's all relative, right? But there is one where like people will look up to and be like, okay, this guy has nice taste. Whether for example, like if you look at just in general fashion, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you see someone who is up to fashion, right? They know how to dress well. Like you
Mm-hmm.
see them in a different light versus someone who with the exact same money, but they're wearing like
Yeah. Just like,
turtleneck
yeah.
jeans and sneakers, right? It's like it's different because I think what you do with your money is individual choice, right? But
Mm-hmm.
how you use it is an expression of yourself, right? So people sometimes, with money they just don't know how to express themselves in the way that they would want. And having someone show you what's cool and what's best, the easiest way to go. Like, for example, like Azuki, like they build out like a culture where it's like it's cool to be part of this community, right? Like
Yeah.
if you sport like an Azuki PFP, like you're already kind of in this community, right?
Club,
Like
right?
you're
Like, yeah, like
in this
you're
club.
cool. You got a couple cool points because you got
You
Azuki.
got a couple cool points. Yeah, it's like you're seen in a different light
Yeah,
versus, like it happens even in like in Web 2, right? Like where
yeah,
like
luxury brands and stuff, right?
luxury brands, right? Like, if you're sporting like bag, right? Like you're seen differently than just wearing like a regular bag from like Nordstrom or something like that, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
it's really an expression of yourself, and how you express yourself is really important because it's really kind of what people see you based on their first impression, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
so
An interesting thought about that is, I think we talked about this off here before, but it's like for
mhm,
luxury brands, one of the key elements to luxury is that the brand actually teaches the buyers what is cool, which I thought was so interesting, right? So it's not as if like a buyer already has a very clear idea of like what they want to do. It's more like they're not really sure. So they look
mhm.
at brands because they're like, oh, these guys are cool. They must know what they're talking about. And then it's like the brands are actually educating them on what to do, or what to wear, or how to act. And that's not a bad thing. It's just like it's culture. So it's very interesting that like probably the same fundamentals do apply to the luxury industry. And but like, would you consider like art a luxury actually?
I do. I mean, it depends on the type of art, but yeah, in general, like anything that value highly, but you don't necessarily need, but you want, it's
Yeah.
like, it's considered a luxury. But I mean, obviously, there's different tiers of luxury, right? And so,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's all
depends on the.
relative. Let's say someone's like really busy with work all the time and they're working, right? From their perspective, free time is a luxury
Yes,
because they
100%.
can't. It's
I can totally attest to that. I
right.
can totally attest to that.
So, but now that let's look at like, a student, for example, who's just like doesn't care about school. All they play is video games. They got plenty of time in the world, right? To them,
Hmm.
free time is not a luxury. It's just like empty space or it's boring. That kind of just proves the point that like luxury is relative.
Yeah, that is true. I think, it's just based on what people value, right? Like, end of the day, like, if everyone values the same thing highly, but only one person's get access to it, then in some way that's considered luxury for that person, right?
So we already covered the art. We covered the artist side of bringing a community of artists together. We covered the side of kind of bringing collectors together to help like make this whole thing work. From there, like from a high level perspective, vision wise, what does JUUNI do from there, right? Let's say you mint out or whatever. And then like, what's the
Hmm.
next step? Is it just to keep building that community? Like, do you want to build a platform or something? Or are you going to do
Hmm.
something with your IP? Like people want to know, right? And obviously you can't
Hmm.
give everything away, but like high level, like what can you
Hmm.
say?
I mean, high level of, of course, like we're gonna try to build out our IP brands
Mm,
further. There's so many different avenues we can approach doing that. And of course, it's like, we really want to support our core community from the beginning, right? So providing both, there's different things in the works, but providing a system for artists to consistently get commissions, and also to really continue finding value for collectors too, right? Or just people who love art, right? Like, I mean, they love to see more content, they love to see more quality work. All that's really important. And in
mm,
general, like, we want to kind of keep educating and artists and collectors alike, right? To kind of build them up better for success in the future, right?
mm, mm.
Whether that's for us bringing in select artists into our umbrella, or rewarding collectors too for being part of our community. There's so many different ways that I think as a project, like it really is putting the community as the forefront and then building the product or the project around them.
Got
And
you.
that's kind of what our direction
Yeah.
is.
One thought I had as you were saying that, what I actually think is the most challenging part in what you're doing, and is opportunity actually, it's actually educating people on why they should collect commission art. For
Hmm.
that's one type of art, right? It could be other things, but like why they should collect
Hmm.
art. Because like I think there are a
Hmm.
lot of people who actually do have some disposable income, whether it's like $50, $100, like $200 for a commission can go a long way for somebody, right? So I think it's like, how do you get more people who want to collect, part of your community, right? Like, how do you convince
Hmm.
somebody to be like, hey, you buy PFPs, but have you ever thought about doing one of ones, or commissioning
Hmm.
someone? Like, what do you think about that? Is that something that you want to like educate people on, or something you think about from a marketing perspective?
I think I'm not sure if it's more educated, but I think it's just more bringing awareness. I think end of the day, it's like whether it's PFPs or, one-of-ones, I think
Hmm.
it's really what people value, right? So I can speak for myself. It's like, when I've gotten to know artists, right, and I've gotten to talk with them and know their work and kind of
Hmm.
what their thought process is. And, I want to like own one of their artwork, because I feel like not only
Mm,
do I, love their work, but I also want to support them, as a friend too. So I think that kind of level of communication is just not really seen at all in like
mm.
in Web 2, right? And like, if you have like a community where people can like intermingle, interact with each other, like there's really that added layer of communication that I think people naturally will want to collect one-on-one work. It's like kind of already happening with our artist that's been streaming. Actually, he's been getting a lot more commission work because of it, right? Because people are talking
I
with
see.
him, people hear what he's saying, and they see his work too, and they like want it in a different one. They want it to look like a Bored Ape with an Azuki or a Doodles, or there's so many things that they want to collect just from like talking with them that I don't think they were kind of doing one-on-one work before. So
Yeah, I got you. Well,
um,
what I was saying is more like a lot of people don't know that they would find joy collecting art. That was my point. Because like maybe they would love it, but they just never know, none of their friends never even thought it was a
yeah,
possibility to hire someone to help them do a commission piece. So I was just thinking like if you guys
100%.
can like increase the demand for, one-of-one art, like that would be so interesting, right? Like increase market size versus just going after collectors. Like what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, so like if you can increase values of one-on-one art, right, then collectors would definitely want to collect them. Like I think, in general, like, collectors just wants to hold things that they value or they think other people will value, right? Just
Hmm.
like when people collect baseball cards, Pokemon cards,
Hmm.
whatever, either they intrinsically find value to it or they think other people find value to. For us, like because, as we grow as a brand, artists get to be known under our brand. People will find value with the artist because of JUUNI, right? And
Yeah,
then that naturally would kind of increase the value of their work.
got you, got you.
That's our hope.
Yeah. Oh, that's the goal,
Yeah.
right?
And the collectors would be happy to hold on to that too, right? Because, they got a really nice quality work and, something that they value as well. And,
Okay.
maybe they would hope that other people value that as highly as they do.
Got you, got you. Okay, so like one another topic I want to touch on is IP, right? So outside of just like the art perspective of like creating art that people want to collect, like obviously you're gonna create a PFP. We've seen other anime projects in the past. They like basically like promise like we're gonna do an anime, we're gonna do a manga, we're gonna do merch, whatever, right? And for you guys, I
Mhm.
can see that you're focusing more on the community side, not necessarily like promising that you're gonna do an anime or a game, right? But because you have the IP, is that something that you want to explore, or what can you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, so like I think when T and I were just like brainstorming, like we really want to push for like beautiful digital experiences. That's like kind of we kind of
Mm,
gravitate towards because that can mean so many different things.
yeah, what does that mean
As in
exactly?
I mean, because like, the goal is like, we want to be like a brand for the metaverse, right? And that could
Hmm.
be so many different things, whether it's through, I mentioned through like, through animation, through gaming. It's really kind of bringing recognition to the brands
Hmm.
and then people identifying it and connecting with that brand. It's just like how you look at like Spider-Man, right?
Hmm.
Spider-Man has been rehashed, I don't even know how many times already, right? But people know his origin story. They know his nemesis. They know his struggles because he seems human. He's real too. And they identify with him too, right? That whole story building is all IP.
Okay.
It's all part of the character Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
And people want to be part of that, right?
Hmm.
And so, like, or what did they do with Spider-Man? They made movies, they made video games, they made
Hmm.
music videos, they sold sneakers too. It's a lot of projects I know push for this because they want to push for their brands, but a lot of times it just takes some time to build out their brand first before they branch out into things like merchandise, animes.
So is that something you are actively doing now? Is that something that people should expect? Or is it more like you're exploring the idea of doing it, but you're not saying you're going to do it or not? For other projects, sometimes they're really unclear and stuff like that. So I just want to, ask.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally understand because as a consumer side, you know what it's like to be on the other side of the veil. I would say like this. I would say like we're definitely exploring it. We're definitely keeping our options open and definitely kind of finding avenues that we think we best fit for the project and
Hmm.
for our future holders and what makes most sense too. I can't promise being in detail, but I can kind of promise that we'll put our best efforts forward and best foot forward, do what's right for the community and for the project as a whole.
All right. I like that. Okay, cool. So as we go ahead and wrap up our interview, are there any, final words that you kind of want to share with our audience or, last messages here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say this. Patrick is been a good friend. He's been with us from the beginning. Like I remember, I hit him up. Like I said, I was just really looking to connect with people with integrity and reputation. And Patrick,
Mm,
I knew him from putting out really good content on YouTube for a while.
mm,
I knew he came from a good place when he spoke about projects and people, right? So, I just kind of felt like I had to connect with him and kind of get his thoughts on doing this because, to build out anything good, I think you really need to gather people with good intentions and people who are willing to kind of buy into your vision too and then also help support you along the way. I'm thankful for Patrick for being one of those people and, supporting us along the way too. And like,
Yeah.
You- and just build out like a long-term project, because it takes some time and it takes a lot of thoughtfulness and it takes a lot of people who have experience too. And I'm always looking to hear people's thoughts on their perspective, and it's really helpful to hear from Patrick. So yeah.
All right, you heard it here. Thanks again, Ice, for coming through, hanging out with us today. Probably loves the interview as well. So with that said, thank you everybody for watching, and Ice, I'll see you next time.